It started out with the Long Island. This ship here all had sound. There were sounds. His ship, they were all bays or famous battles, that type of thing. The Long Island was started 3/6/41. This is before the war. It didn't have any of this here. It was a flat top, perfectly flat. Its deck didn't go that far, it came to about here. They conned the ship from underneath. That was ABG-1. Then they started making them BAVG 1-6. That was still looking like the first ones. They finally put some island up here. Then they came Bogue class. This is this one. ABG, again, 6-25. This is the first class that they had. Out of that 6-25, we only kept 10. Everything else went to Britain. Then they had 6-29, Sagamore class. These were made of tankers. They were about 50 feet longer. They carried more fuel and everything else. They carried more planes and everything. Then came back to the Prince William. It's the same as the Bogue class. They went up to from 31 to 54. Only one of them stayed in the United States. All the rest went to Britain. Then you had the Kaiser class, his class, 55 to 104. Then there was a class made by the Navy using all these other classes, taking the best thing that they liked about them, and they made their own class. That went from 105, actually to 123. That's how many of these ships were made. There was 4 others, but they weren't in, they never finished. This is the model, it's not the ship.
Pull the mic over a little toward you.
Yeah, I gotta figure out where the heck I am. The Bogue started 1/15/42. I tried to enlist in the Navy 2/13/42. They wouldn't have me. I only weighed 103 pounds. I went 3.5 years in the Navy. I came out maybe 104 pounds. And it didn't work. This ship was built up in Tacoma, Washington. Did its sea trials up there. It left there, went to San Diego, picked up its squadron, went down through the Panama Canal and over to Norfolk for training for to be a hunter-killer group. From there, it went up to Agentua, Newfoundland, where it picked up British officers and men, and it was at that time run under the British Navy. It took 2 convoys out a third of the way across the Atlantic. Then it returned for another convoy. While it was with the convoy, it was in the middle of a convoy. That's not a good place for an aircraft carrier. It lost no ships while it was with the convoy. Soon after it left, it came back to the States, came back to Canada actually. The convoy started losing ships. The third convoy, it took the convoy all the way over to Belfast Island to do training over there. And with that convoy, it lost none. It did this and training back and forth. On March 5th, it went with another convoy, and it sank No, I got it wrong here. It damaged U-231, 468, and 305. and then later on it sank 569. It kept doing this. It would go with convoys across the Atlantic or to Gibraltar. And each one of these convoys that it went with, it would sink more subs. It sank U-217 on June 8th. It sank it damaged 758, and then it sank U-118 and U-460. It was part of the American, after it came back from Belfast, Ireland, they realized that they could not work this being in the center of a convoy, because as soon as they want to take planes off or land planes, it has to go into the wind. This ship only did 18 knots at the very best, and that's not fast enough for planes. So after that, it would work outside of the convoy. Sometimes it would work with 2 convoys at a time. And each time it went out, it was sinking more subs. Then there was an outfit called the 10th Fleet. The 10th Fleet had admirals and captains and everybody else, but it had no ships. What it did was spy work. They had broken the German Enigma, and they knew the code. They could read the code after a while. So the 10th Fleet would tell the captain of this ship, go to such and such a place. He didn't order him, he told him where he could find U-boats. And that's what the 10th Fleet did all through the rest of the war. And I have page after page here where I can give you different sinkings that they did. They sank 12 submarines before I got onto it. The same time this was doing all this good work and everything, the Navy decided to send me down to Florida, get a tan, things like that. I went to Jacksonville Naval Air Station. I did all kinds of guard duty. I even had guard duty one time. It was a bicycle watch around the Waves Barracks. It was nice. But, and from there I went over to Mayport, Florida, where the biggest thing we had at that time was like a tugboat. Now they get the largest carriers going at the same place. I don't know where they put them, but they get them. They had one sub they sank, 118, they had on TV, where one of the sailors, his father was put in a concentration camp, and he decided to tell all the secrets that he could. And when he went from one prison camp to another prison camp in the United States, his crewmen caught up with him and they hanged him in the barracks. Another one that happened, can you put on 3?
What do you have
Or
here?
work them up to 3. This would be a sinking of one of the subs.
That's sinking one of the, see now, let me see.
On May 5th, they attacked RO 501. That was a German sub, XU 1224. But at this time, it was working in the Japanese Navy. That's the first Japanese flag on there.
Okay.
And June 15th, they sank I-52.
Well now, you want,
3.
let me, this is number 2.
I-52 was a Japanese sub that came all the way from Japan, and off Cape Verde Islands. It picked up German navigators and radar people. It was sunk,
This is number 3.
okay, it was sunk on June 23rd. It was carrying 228 tons of exotic metals, 54 tons of rubber, 3 tons of quinine, 2 tons of gold. This also was the largest ship, largest sub sank in the Atlantic Ocean.
That doesn't relate to this number 3 here, though.
What do we got? Oh, this is, the Bogue didn't lose any aircraft due to German action. But this is, we had a lot of crashes like this. This is a plane that came in, missed the wires on the back end of it, missed the crash barriers, and pushed one plane into the ocean, one down on the forecastle, and it went down in the forecastle, and it also damaged another plane. About this time, where are we? October 16th, I was put on the Bogue.
What year?
44. I spent a lot of time down in Florida. I didn't care for it. Well, I had a good time down there, but I wanted to get on a ship. Our first thing, once we got on the ship, we went to Bermuda. We did training with Italian submarines. And then from there, we went up to New York City. And it took us 5 days in a hurricane to get to New York City. From there, we went to Norfolk, back to New York City, picked up 60 P-51s and brought them over to Liverpool, England. Then back to training, and we did a lot of training up at Quonset Point and Newport. We were up at Quonset Point qualifying pilots and such as that.
Yeah.
And we got a rush to go out, and we became part of Operation Teardrop. Operation Teardrop was supposed to be a big thing at that time because they knew 6 subs were coming across the Atlantic, and they thought they were going to have rockets on them to bomb New York City and other coastal cities. It turned out to be a false alarm, but they didn't know that at that time.
You want to describe anything on this
This
Operation Teardrop, April, May of 1945?
is Operation Teardrop. This is the first barrier here with the carrier Croatan and Mission Bay. This is the second barrier. This is where the Bogue down here and the core up here. We had about 40 DEs in between here, and they were 10 miles apart. Ours were 5 miles apart. The carriers were back here, where on ours we were right up on the front line. This one here, they sank, I think, 4 subs. They were out there first. They were picked up the subs and everything in the very beginning.
And relative to where we are, the United States, this is all North Atlantic. Is that correct?
It's North Atlantic, but it's hard to say because the maps go off. All right. This is Newfoundland, off here.
Okay.
And this is the Azores. But they were just sweeping straight across in one long line. On the second barrier reef, we had BC-19 with us at that time. They sighted U-546, which submerged near the center of the control line. The FC Davis had obtained a contact with this and was working it down. You got number 5? The U-boat torpedoed and sank her because it broke the ship right in half. They went down very fast. But then the U-boat went down and stayed under the survivors. They didn't move, and the other DEs couldn't get at them right away. Using hedgehogs and depth charges and like that, they finally got the submarine and sank it. But in the meantime, there was the Davis had broken up. There was bodies all over the place and survivors. The DEs picked up the survivors and brought them to us. And then after they sank the submarine, they brought 33 of their survivors. I was in the 1st Division. We were right next to the sick bay, so we gave up our beds and everything so that Davis could be next to the sick bay and be taken care of, but they still lost men. We had a burial.
What was the number of that destroyer escort?
I don't know. I could find it, but I don't know right now. But it was the FC Davis. You got 5?
What do you have? All right, that's burial C.
Yeah, that's burial C.
That's burial, sir.
This is the guy that was supposed to be here tonight. This is our offices, our burial crew. This is the Davis's men. There's a group of sailors back here, right next to the 25-inch gun, and that's where I am.
Yeah.
The one bad part about it, when they brought the German survivors on, they had to go right through the 1st Division to go down to the forward hold where we kept them as prisoners. Give you a little bit of.
You can see it as well.
Let's try 6 and 7. See what we got on there.
Let's see, that was 6. This
And
is
7. All right, this is the German prisoners down the forward hold. And what do we got on 8? No, go the other way. Go that way. Go that way.
Hey, what? Over
There you
here.
go. All right, this is
Over here.
basically where the Bogue sank the 12 submarines. Is that
That's
9 or 8?
That's 8.
8. What's 9?
That looked like some of your artwork, huh?
Oh, no. All right, this is, after that, we were going to the Pacific, so they brought the ship in, we repainted and everything. This is me. I know it's me because I was on the first scaffold. I wouldn't stand down. But when we went out to the Pacific, they used a different color scheme. It was a plain, all one color. The dark that you see there, the darkest part of that. And that's 10 or what?
That's 9.
That's 9. All right. This is when we carry Navy planes. We can get as many as 100 planes on that carrier at that time.
down in the hangar deck and on the flight deck. Every bit of it's used.
Corsairs?
They're everything.
This is a TBM. This is a dive bomber that goes that way. F4F would have the wings back the same as this.
Probably SB-2C. From that point on, we were moved out to the Pacific, and basically we did nothing but transport planes and men. This is coming down here and around. We went out to Pearl, to Guam, or to Samar in the Philippines. We made this quite a few times. Then we went up, just after the war ended, we went from here up to Adak and the Aleutians, and then back to Seattle, and then go back this way. The last place we went to was Okinawa, Tokyo, Japan, and then back home. And that was the end of the war at that time. When the war ended with Germany, we were out still after the submarines. But when the war ended with Japan, we just happened to be in San Francisco and had a good time. That's all I can say on that part. I kept a diary of every time we went in and out of a port, and we passed the international date line 6 times, back and forth. We did a lot, like over in the Atlantic, we did much more than this. We traveled up and down for training and stuff like that. I have the names and dates of all the U-boats sunk and their commanding officers. Okay, can we go to this?
How many German submarines are sunk?
Hmm?
How many German submarines are sunk in the whole war?
The carriers, American carriers sank about 55. I don't know how many were sunk. Well, most of the subs that were sunk were picked up by planes of one sort or another. Army planes, Navy planes, coastal. But they were usually picked up by planes and then had the destroyers coming, and maybe they did the sinking and everything. But they would show them where they were.
How did you document the actual sum, that you know, the number on it? What
They broke the code. They broke the code, and they knew.
Oh, they know where.
They knew what something they were going after
I
before they
see.
even.
If you're interested in that, there's a very good book I just read called Enigma.
Yeah.
You can get it in the library, and it really explains how they broke the code and what they had to do.
And that was a very hard thing. It was like a typewriter, but it had wheels. And when they thought they were finding out anything, they would just basically add another wheel. And each time they added a wheel, it made the code so much harder to break. So they thought. Another thing they did, if this carrier was going to such and such a place after this sub, usually it was after what they call a milk cow, a supply sub. But it wouldn't just go there. It would create a rouge and make them think something else was going on, that's why this carrier was there. They just didn't go. And the British didn't want that at all. They wanted these carriers to be used for the convoy, and when they knew they were subs there, they would change the route of the convoy, not bring it at the same place.
Could you describe the tactics used by the Bogue and ships like that when they would get a sub? What would they do? Would the planes detect it first? How would the Bogue then proceed?
No, they would get it by radio from the 10th Fleet. They told them about where to go. They had Huff Duff, which is high frequency direct confinement. When they got to a certain area, this little tiny radar here would pick it up first, then the big one would work. This one here is just a homing device for the planes to come back to the ship. Once planes went out, they would either use homing torpedoes, depth charges, bombs, and then near the end, they were using rockets. They didn't have these, some of these things, these were all ongoing. They didn't have it in the beginning. And if the planes couldn't sink the sub by itself, they just called it DEs in, and they would be coming in anyway. They had two things they would try. They would be protecting the carrier and sinking the other.
Is it true that a ship like that can sit above a submarine and just outweight it until the sub would have to surface?
Not this one. Maybe a destroyer Escort would do it. So
Something
this
that-
one would, if this one knew that there was a sub there, it would go the other way. So they could send its planes there, but it wouldn't stay near it.
You didn't have any sound gear on her, did you?
What?
You didn't have any sound gear on her, did you?
No,
No. You couldn't tell if it was a submarine or a rocket in the water.
no. We had nothing like that.
Vince,
Hmm.
how many destroyers and how many small carriers were in the hunter-killer group?
There was at least 10 hunter killer groups, and each hunter, well, in the beginning, they used the old four-stack destroyers until they got a big supply of DEs, then they switched over to DEs. In fact, one time we were working with Prince Rupert, which is a Canadian corvette. They worked with us for quite a while. This is some, when I bring this gangplank up, the propellers are supposed to go, but the switch is not working, so it's not. I bring it. That's the foghorn. This is sending out Morse code now. This is your running light. Green, red, mass light, tail. There's a little boat over here. It has 77 pieces to it. It's only 3 inches long. This one on this side, it has 127 pieces to it. It has the ribs, everything to it. I did.
May I say one thing about this boat? This was not built from a kit. You don't buy kits like this. How long?
Were the carriers we supplied to Brent, were they under the Lend-Lease agreement? Was that?
Yes. And 46, right after the war, they all came back, except the ones that were sunk. And one of them was sent to Canada.
How long did it take you to write that?
2 years.
Where did you get the plans? You had, must have had some to scale it and all that kind of.
Right, can you show one of them? This is what I built it from. I don't know if you...
Can't make out much from that one, the other one.
All right. But this is the whole, it's just a
That's,
line drawing.
That's a, there you can see the bow of it, right here.
Give me one of the other ones. It's upside down.
Back.
All right, this is the back, the stern. But this is what I had to go by. That's all I had. And
Does that have any dimensions on it,
not really.
Not
It's
really.
1/8. Well, that's,
or you can scale it though, so.
this was, the first plans I got were for 10 foot 6 inches. I had to have it come down, not up. And this is 196 or 1/8.
1/8 of an inch to the foot, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can see the bow pretty well here, I guess. Right?
This is where they were burying the people from the Davis. This 40 millimeter here was my gun mount. I started out on it as third loader. You get the ammunition and you just keep passing it up. I was told, become a first loader, you do less. You do. You just stand up there and just look around.
What if that helps any?
I was, my
Give you a better
quarters
picture.
were down in here. This is where, all right here is where the Davis people were being buried.
Exclusive of the people that
Right.
flew the airplanes, what was the complement of a vessel?
About 800, but it went up to over 1,000 at times. It would keep changing. It depended on how many planes they had. This is counting the planes and everything.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Leave that out.
Well, they don't break it down that way.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lot. How many guns did you have? What caliber?
40 millimeters and 20 millimeters. That's all we had.
Nothing bigger than that.
Oh, 2 5s in the back.
Two.
Yeah.
What would they have been used for? Such light armor guns, such small.
They wouldn't do anything.
If anything was coming, they'd shoot. You feel better.
And you couldn't really run,
Yeah.
which
Any aircraft possible.
CVs that he was on, they came up against the 18-inch guns of the battleships. They couldn't do nothing. The shells went right on through them. You know,
What's
it's
the
like
best-
1/4-inch steel. This is my forward lookout when I was there. Otherwise, I'd be down in underneath the seat in there you'd be on.
What's
Later.
the power plant? What was the power? Drove the propellers? What did you
I
have?
believe it was steam, but I'm
What-
not on that.
What
one.
tonnage was it?
That was steam reciprocating.
Yeah.
It was steam reciprocating, first of their kind.
Yeah.
What tonnage is this rated?
I can look it up.
No, was it like an 8,000 tonner or, see the big ones
Yeah,
are
it's
like
about
27,000 tons.
Yeah, it was about 8,005, something like that. Later on in the war, this came off. They didn't keep that on.
What is that?
It's part of the radar.
I worked on that radar on the boat. That's for GAQ.
Uh-huh.
And that was the so-called secret weapon.
Well, when I first started making that, I had no pictures of nothing.
Yeah.
After I built it, and I seen a picture of it, it's pretty close.
Starboard side, forward, rudder.
I have some statistics on the boat.
Huh?
I have some statistics on the boat. It was a single screw type vessel of 8,500 horsepower, displacing
There you go.
13,890 tons, 490 foot.
Where did you get that?
They gave it to me when I go up the ship.
You were on the boat?
Yeah.
Why don't you come to our reunions?
Where was it?
Well, this year it's going to be down in Maryland, Virginia,
Williamsburg.
Williamsburg.
Williamsburg, yeah?
Yeah.
What
You give me your address, I'll get you there.
Okay.
Okay.
Can he come up and tell us a little about
Yeah,
what he did?
what were you on the ship?
A pain in the neck. It's the gunnery division.
What?
Gunnery division. I was a pointer on that 40 right in front of the bridge.
This one.
Yeah.
You remember a fellow named Ramirez Gilbert?
Yeah.
He would have been the first loader on it.
I might know why I faced it.
Yeah.
Ensign Duffy was the gun captain on that thing. Remember Ensign Duffy?
I remember him, but. Well, I got on this, I was on it a little over 13 months. So I was on it until it finally was put back in mothballs.
Well, I got on her when she was in that ride dock here, scraping the bottom.
All right. In
Then we went
Portsmouth.
around to the Pacific.
Yeah, you went to Yorktown, got rid of all the ammunition?
No, we didn't get rid of it, we loaded it.
Well, we got rid of it first, you know, going in there. Going into dry dock, they wanted the
Oh,
ammunition.
yeah, right, okay.
How many planes did she carry normally for that when it wasn't ferrying planes, you know?
Around 26 or less.
What were they, Grumman's or Corsairs?
TVS, and F4Fs, F6Fs. We qualified F4Us, which is a very fast plane, but we didn't run them. Going after the subs, they moved into the F6Fs. And the TVF, this is the F6F. And the TVMs, which had to be catapulted off here, in the later part of the war, they carried a searchlight on it. And coming over the horizon, it would drop this down, and they had a contact with the sub. And it made everything look just like daylight. It was bright as anything. It was an arc flight.
What type of materials did you use to make the boat?
I didn't need
What
it.
type of materials did you use, like wood or plastic?
It's Luan that you use for the outside of your house. It's plywood. That would be the ribs. The side of it is regular balsa wood, but then it's fiberglass to give it some kind of strength. And I have all kinds of magazines and everything to get the different parts. These the 40 millimeter guns I got from Surmar in England. I just sent over there. It's your preference, what you like. This here round part is actually plywood. It's that thin that you can just about bend it and do anything you want with it.
So everything is like to the scale of those guns that you bought?
Yeah. These are, you just, when you order them to your scale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's other people like you.
Huh?
There's other people.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot.
How many hours to build?
Vince? Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned.
I can't see with that light.
Okay. One of the things you mentioned to me when you brought the model a month ago was you pointed out an unusual item on the ship, a punching bag, you know, that sailors use to keep their exercise, in the back part of the ship, and said that there were 2 of them on the ship. Well, the people in the library, in their publicity, they mentioned that there was one at that location, and they wanted people to find the other one, and nobody found the other one.
No, because they were looking at it from this side, and it's over this side, and back of one of these stanchions.
Okay.
This is what he's talking about.
There's a little tiny punching bag there that's about 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch or something, hanging from a bracket, you know, it looks just like
This is also to get down, if I have to change the letter or anything, I can take this off. And all I do is just turn this thing. That keeps it on.
Let's see if we can put a close-up of it on the video.
This one.
Yeah. Get some fucking light behind it. See if you can, don't know if you can see it there or not. Right near my fingernail.
You got it behind the shadows. Tilt it.
Right there.
Tilt it towards me. Then tilt it up this way.
Ever up on that bridge when they blew the whistle?
No.
Okay. Okay, that's good.
You
Okay.
haven't lived.
Can you tell me what this is? On that
I'll let you
forward
put it
mast?
back in.
Forward mast,
Yeah.
that's the DAQ bird cage. That's what was used for getting a bearing on the submarine. You had a 100 tiller group, you had 4 or 5 stuff tin cans,
Yeah.
4 or 5 tin cans on the missile carrier. You had the bird cage on the carrier. You had 2 of the cans were the same bird cage on it.
Uh-huh.
We had the German code which we had broken. We could tell, I was a radioman then.
Uh-huh.
We could tell by, we knew exactly what frequencies they were going to transmit on. We knew when they changed from atmospheric.
Mm-hmm.
The whole monitor is a certain frequency, we got a bearing on it. Bearing on the carrier, bearing on the tin can.
Yeah.
We had them locked in every 7 planes. And you hold your breath when they launch TBS.
What did happen when the whistle blew?
He just stood there and almost died. It was a steam whistle. And it was so loud,
Just the sound. Yeah.
so loud.
This thing partially comes apart. The reason these planes would actually go, it's all wired up from the bottom. If you can see it. You can take screws off here and down here. This whole back comes up. Same with here. This whole front can come up. The elevator I can take out of this one. This one I gotta, it comes up with the whole deck and everything. This comes off and comes apart, different parts. If anybody would like to come up and look at it, there's a little scrambled eggs in here. But even the batteries I have to build because I have to get them in a certain place. And I think I put too many ribs in it now, but not at that time. But yeah, sure.
Okay, come on up and we're going to have a little discussion about, or a little description, I believe, of the code breaking that was done and the results of it. And your name, sir?
Sid Greenwald.
Sid,
You want to use that?
if you'd stand back here, then they can hear what you're saying.
Can you hear me without that?
That is well. That is well.
Well,
You must have point. You must be able to point at things.
for that other guy that was on the Bogue, I was one of your radio twidgets, as we were fondly referred to. But that mast that you see on the starboard side forward, it's very hard to see, it's a bird cage, basically a direction finder. It was on the carrier. We had them on the Bogue, the Block Island, the Mission Bay, Santee, and a whole bunch of them. And then you'd have it supporting the carrier, 4 or 5 tin cans. At the beginning of the war, they were 4-pipers, as you mentioned. I was on the Tarbell, DD-112, World War I destroyer with sheep on. They called them tin cans. Any tin can sailors here? Well, I take my hat off to you guys. Should have got submarine pay. Tough duty. The reason they call them tin cans is because the hull is so thin, you could lie in your bunk and feel the hull breaking on you, right?
Right.
Good for the nerves. Anyhow, you may recall that we were losing submarines right and left. And suddenly this whole thing seemed to stop and we caught up with them. And that was attributed a great deal to this DAQ direction finder. The way it worked was very quickly. I told you there's one here, 2 on the other tin cans. We had broke the German code. We knew Germans being very methodical, we knew exactly when they would transmit, when they would change frequencies. And as a radioman, I didn't have access to the code because I was not commissioned, but we could copy the code and we'd know whether it was a position report, a fueling report, or sinking report, or whatever. What happened is originally, from where I sat, the convoys would be moving, North Atlantic, that's where I operated. Convoys would be moving, the submarine would contact a convoy, do their damage, and get out of there. Then they hit upon the idea of the wolf pack, so you had a convoy going along, you had a submarine following them, and you had more submarines following that until they could form a pack. And then they would attack all at once, and you know what happened. So what we did originally, when we got a German U-boat contact, we went after it. Then we caught on the fact of what they were doing, so now you had a convoy going, and the Germans following the convoy, we were following the Germans. And then we could attack, instead of getting one, we did 4 or 5, a couple of them. Mostly by TBS, depth charges, and what they have up in the bow, what do they call it? Hedgehogs.
Did you have home torpedoes?
I don't know, there's one of the gunners mentioned about that.
Because they had them on the planes.
What was that hedgehog?
threw them
It's a
out.
Multiple rockets. They're just multiple rockets on the bow, shot right up.
They say they didn't explode unless they hit something.
And you all know how the depth charge is operated, I guess. Anybody doesn't know how a depth charge operates?
No.
You don't? Well, you drop a big trash can full of explosives, you set it to explode at a certain depth. You fire a pattern and run like hell to get away so you don't blow your stern away. And that the percussion underneath the water will hopefully split the seam on the submarine.
How could you get a confirmation that you had hit one?
Well, back in those days, I guess mostly by debris coming to the surface.
If it was nighttime though?
Breaking up
Well, you could
noises.
probably,
Could you see enough debris coming up that you could confirm?
Yeah, but
Debris,
well, you lose
survivors.
the submarine. You could hear the
You
noises.
wouldn't contact.
Different
But on a boat
noises.
like this, you didn't have that kind of contact.
No, but
He was
would
on
have,
a
he would have
no, he wasn't
escorts
on
with
this.
him.
He was on a smaller,
Oh, okay. That had radio.
I was
that was
aboard her.
closer to the submarine.
I went aboard her just when they installed that gear. And stayed on it for a short period of time, breaking the radio.
Yeah.
We went to the car, the Croatan, the Mission Bay, and a whole bunch.
But
Thank you
Don-
very much.
But Donzig had his
question.
submarines give these long reports, weather, everything else. And that's what helped us a lot, because they could pick up all that radio message. For some reason, he just had them stay on there and keep talking.
the question, Sid, how did that German code messages come in? I mean, was it like
Five.
our own code came in 5 letters?
Yeah, they came in the same way.
What did they, how did they send it in?
Same way as I recall, but we could tell by the format. At least I could tell, I was trained to tell by the format.
Yeah. So
Position.
in other words, it was just 5, in ours, it would be 5 in
Yeah,
just letters coming in, and then you get 5 more, and so on.
But that's what the 10th Fleet did. They just worked on that code and let everybody know where these subs were. They'd push them off to this or that. Once they got in there, then with the radar and other things, they got right in close. Any questions?
Didn't the Germans get?
Was there much cooperation with the English at all? I mean, they had the same situation going here, didn't they?
Yeah, but they had a different idea on the convoys. They wanted to chase the convoys away from the subs. And the Americans wanted to get the subs and just eliminate them. And once they started doing that, it got better all the time. At the end of the war, if you see my notes and everything, we didn't get many subs. The last sub they got before this Operation Teardrop was a sub up off of Nova Scotia. They knew that there was a spy on it. And when it was sunk, about 13 of them got off the sub and everything, and the spy was one of them. After the war, he was going to New York, East 86th Street. And after the war, he sued the captain of our ship for the money that they took off of him. He said it all belonged to his mother. He didn't get it back. Yeah.
When you're Pacific Theater, did the Japanese code get broken also?
They had broken that one, but I don't think as completely as they did the German one.
They broke it at Midway.
Yeah, but I don't think it's complete. Once they broke the German one, they just could read their message. They knew exactly what they were saying every bit. When we went on Operation Teardrop, when we left the United States going out to our position, we knew we were going after 6 subs that came from Norway. And then later on, one more came. And they accounted for all of them. The last 1 or 2 surrendered at the end of the war. Because that was just before the end of the war in Germany.
Didn't the Germans get suspicious about they were losing so many subs that we had broken the code?
No,
or
really,
something?
they thought it was so, such a good system, they didn't think anybody would break it.
But
And actually,
they were losing a lot of subs.
huh?
They were losing a lot of subs.
I know, but they thought it was so
Somebody
good.
up there should have, you know, hey, what's going
And
on?
actually, they started breaking it all the way back with the Polish people before the Germans went into Poland. And then it went to France, and then it went to England, and then when we got into the war, we were helping them out too. Yeah, anybody?
I was on when the seaman got killed under the forward elevator. In fact, I was supposed to be cleaning there, and they took me off cleaning duty and put me on lookout. And he took my place, and he had never been down there, and he went in the wrong place.
Could you tell us about the LSO officer?
Well, that was early in the war. He was standing here, and that's what this net is. When a plane came in, they came way over to him and knocked this down, knocked him, killed him. But he should have jumped in here. Maybe he couldn't, maybe, you know, I don't know what the reason was, but that's the only reason that net is there.
Did you work with the card?
Yes.
USS card? Was that in this class?
It was the same as this. This was number 11.
We worked, you talked about up off of, what, Constance Point up there? We worked with the card as
Yeah.
plane guard.
Uh-huh.
It's a Marine Aviation station up there, and they were practicing landing at sea.
Right.
And we were running with both lifeboats
The card went with us.
out on the outrigger because we had to drop them real fast to pick up these pilots that weren't
Yeah.
making the plane or the ship.
The card went with us when we went over to Liverpool in England. But we worked with that. We worked with the Corps, which is number 13. The two main ones we worked with.
You have a question in the front row here.
Hello. Yes.
What, there's little, what are these?
These are floating nets. If the ship went down and you couldn't get into one of these would just spread out. Things you see painted on there would be cork round things that would hold the net up. You just climbed on it and hoped that it would help hold you up.
If a plane did miss, do you have any apparatus to get the pilot out of the water?
I was part of that one time. They put a rubber suit on me, a rope, and a few other things, and I was supposed to run out on the sponson because he'd go over the front, and I was supposed to swim to him. And I think the one time they did it, the plane went by so fast that they just gave up on it.
And just the escorts normally did
Yes, they would.
rescue of that kind.
They usually
Tell
have
them
two.
why. Why did they do it?
I don't know, but they told us to.
No, because you got ice cream for doing it. So anyone that they brought back, you know, like that, they would send the pilot back like Breacher Boy, and they would send ice cream and whatever else. That was one of the, yeah.
Would they send out the Jeep carriers without a destroyer or destroyer escort screen? Or
I don't
would you
remember
rendezvous
ever.
with them out there near the subs?
We usually had 3 or more DEs with us all the time. Later on, when we went to the Pacific and the war was almost over, we always had another carrier or something like that. It was never like what Don did, was his capital ship running all by itself. There was always some other ship with us. And that's why I don't agree with what happened to his captain. A lot of people don't.
You said the speed was about 18 knots. So it was 18 knots. What was the speed of a convoy that you were escorting?
6 on up.
That's
The
not-
fastest one we went with was 15.
So you were faster than the convoy's basic speed?
Yeah. But once after the first 3 convoys, it never worked in the convoy again. It always worked out sometime between 2 convoys. Because it could send its planes a long distance, you know, and so it could do more help out there. Yes.
How did the German sub surrender to the ship?
They didn't surrender to our ship. It usually was bombed or rocketed or something. It was sinking. And then the men would get off the submarine and then we'd pick them up. I think that's it.
Unless we got another one, yes.
So he meant that you said that there were 2 from Norway that surrendered?
Yes.
He'd like to know how they surrendered.
Oh, they went into Newfoundland.
Oh.
That was when the war was over.
The war with Germany was over at that time.
And the Germans sent out a message to all submarines that the war was over. And I read in a book that I'm reading that one of the German submarines had a British cruiser right in his crosshairs, ready to fire. And the message came through for them to cease, the war was over. And he kept his crosshairs on the ship, and he had them go through all of the procedures ready to fire the torpedoes, and then finally stopped and dived and left. And he was very disappointed. Here's one more kill I could make, but he followed the orders and
well, there were some subs that didn't give up.
Yeah.
They went to Argentina or something like that, and some of them showed up way after the war. They didn't all, surrender.
Yeah. Maybe I could tell them a little bit about the convoy itself. I was on a destroyer escort.
how about standing at the lectern so that we can get a better, record it better, if you would.
The convoys usually were anywhere from 50 to 75 ships. And if they, like 70 ships, they would have 10 across in each line with about 7 deep. So you had a package going across, making the crossing. And then they'd have escorts on all the wings, and then maybe in the middle, in the back corners. And then there'd be one about 4,000 or 5,000 yards out the head of the convoy, and one maybe 4,000 or 5,000 yards back of the convoy. So you had a whole operation just moving across. They would zigzag back and forth. In those cases, the ships that had the most important cargo, either cargo being people or war materials, they would be in the center of the convoy. The troop ships, or the commodore of the convoy, he would be right up in the center. He'd be in the center of the front row, the 7th. And they'd move across like that. We used to travel about 13 knots. So it would take us roughly about 15 days to make a crossing. And I think we did it 6 times.
Where did you leave from?
We usually sailed out of either New York, Brooklyn Navy Yard, Norfolk, out of Boston, or Portland, Maine. And we usually went to ports in England, France, once in Italy, once in Belfast, and other places like Liverpool, Cardiff, and those places. But we weren't necessarily looking for submarines. That was really the job of the killer group. We were trying to protect the convoy from the submarines. And at the time that sort of as you got toward the end of the war, as you say, there just weren't that many out there anymore.
Right.
So, but it was kind of an interesting thing. They communicated. Pardon me. They communicated back and forth with radio, TBS they called it, talking between ships, and that was very short range, so you could talk openly back and forth. And there are kind of some interesting stories. One of the ships was having trouble keeping up with the rest of the convoy. So the commodore of the convoy talked to the captain and said, "Hey, you got to get going because we don't like to slow the whole convoy down. We don't want to abandon you." So he said, "Well, I'm doing the best I can." So he said, "Well, get your engineer up there, and we'll talk to him." So they talked to the engineer, and pretty much the same story. There wasn't a whole lot you could do. So they're willing to slow the convoy down maybe 1 knot, or maybe 2, and give them a chance to catch up, because to abandon them out in the middle of the Atlantic you just didn't want to do that. But on one of the convoys, 2 of the ships collided. One was a tanker and one was a cargo ship. And apparently just a malfunction. The weather was good, and it was at night, and they saved most of those people. But it was interesting. This concept of the killer groups really accomplished a great deal.
You never dealt with them?
No,
Yeah.
when we left the Pacific, the Atlantic, we went over to the Pacific and we were with a couple of the small so-called baby top carriers. And I guess I'm getting old, but I kind of forget the names.
Yeah.
But
Well, if he wasn't on them.
yeah, it wasn't the boat. No, I was on a destroyer Escort 327, which was the USS Bristol. And they're all gone.
Yeah. In the Pacific, we just did transport duties. Brought planes out, and brought men planes back. And at the end of the war, they had what they call magic carpet. And then we'd go to the different islands out there and pick up loads of men, load the ship down, and come back with them.
Bring them back. Yeah.
What offensive measures could you take if you were attacked?
He didn't hear you.
I'm sorry.
He's asking.
If you were destroyer escort, what offensive measures could you take if the convoy was attacked?
Well, what of course they attempted to do, the idea of this screen, so-called screen they had, was to force the submarines out further and further as you moved along, so that they got out of the range of the torpedoes. We had sonar on, so we could pick up a submarine, and whichever one did, usually the ones on the wings tend to do that more because it would be on the outside of the convoy. And they would then be released by the Commodore to go kind of chase that submarine. We had, the one I was on had a 3-inch gun. That's the biggest gun we had. We had quad 40s, 40 millimeters, twin 40s. We had hedgehogs up front and 2 racks of ash cans or in the rear for the pattern that they described. So we had a pretty good defense. We could do about maybe 18 knots, not too fast. See, we couldn't stay with a big carrier. These were converted, what, Liberty ships or Victory ships?
C3.
So they had
a transport.
Yeah, they had a speed of about 18, 20. 18. Yeah, that's about all we could do. So usually they would send.
You could stay together. You know.
Yeah, they'd send a destroyer with us. Usually there'd be maybe 8, 10 escorts and a destroyer, and that would be the head of the screen. Usually
when we did 15, we were with troop ships and gasoline tankers, different kind of tankers, but we were with them, and when we left them, they went right into France, and we went up. We had to go around the island, come into Liverpool, because there were subs on the way in. We had to go around just out of the way, because we had no defense at all at that time. When you're carrying cargo like that, you don't have any planes of your own, and you couldn't even get them off anyway. And if you did get them off, you're never going to get them back on. So when we did transport duty, we had no planes of our own. We were really defenseless.
Whatever happened to that big plane you picked up in Tokyo?
I don't know.
The one that looked like the B-17?
Yep. Looked exactly like a B-17. It was all painted black. The story I heard was they were going to bring it over to the close to the United States and launch it and bomb someplace as if it was a B-17. But when we were coming back from there, we had all different kind of planes. Yep. At the end, we had jet planes, and we had our own planes. When I was down in Mayport, Florida, they brought planes back from the Pacific War all the way across the United States. These have been planes that have been shot up, pretty well used. They put them on barges, brought them out to the Atlantic, and sank them. I don't know why they brought them that distance, but that's all they did with them. Yeah. Okay, anybody? We have they didn't want the Germans to know that they had broke the code, and that was one of the ways that they could have found out.